Grand Theft Auto is a series that has been going on for 25 years now, which is honestly just terrifying, and the passage of time needs to slow its roll. In that time, we've seen 7 main entries into this franchise and a plethora of great DLC. And with Grand Theft Auto 6 finally on the horizon, I thought it was about time I look back and recap this series. I thought I would catch anyone up who's not experienced the highs and lows of this best-selling IP. Before we get into the video, it would really be appreciated if you could hit like, and if you're new here, make sure to subscribe with post notifications turned on. Also, these videos cannot happen without the support of my patrons over on patreon.com/founderproductions, link in the description. Now, in case you didn't know, Grand Theft Auto started as a bird's eye view Windows game, far from what it's turned into. The first game in the series is very bare bones, as it follows an unnamed criminal protagonist through a fictionalized United States, progressively climbing the criminal ladder across 6 missions. There is technically cutscenes, but they're just stereotyped criminals that give you the task for the next mission. That being said, the game did lay a solid foundation for much of the series going forward, in particular the game world, that would go largely unchanged for the following 2 decades. Grand Theft Auto's missions took place across 3 US cities, based on real-life counterparts. First, Liberty City, based off of Manhattan, then San Andreas, initially presented as San Francisco, but eventually evolving to the whole of California, and Vice City, based in Miami, and the hub of where GTA 6 is going to take place. Obviously, in retrospect, this game was fairly basic, but at the time of its release it was hugely successful, almost immediately getting an expansion to London, which to be fair was just a mission pack, but confirmed that London was part of this game world. However, the successor to this mega successful first entry kind of feels like a black sheep in the franchise. Set in a futuristic dystopia called Anywhere USA, GTA 2 copied over the mission structure of its predecessor, but switched up the format of the story being told. Instead of badly rendered generic cutscenes, Rockstar filmed a full 8-minute short film to be released alongside GTA 2 that was sprinkled throughout the game. The film told the story of Claude Speed, a criminal aiding numerous crime lords throughout the city, before being assassinated by a hitman from one of the victims of his robberies. It is genuinely the most 1999 short film I've ever seen. Like, I'm honestly surprised Keanu Reeves didn't show up in a trench coat halfway through. It was a cool touch to that game, and it was a sign of a narrative direction that the series would take going forward. In fact, the third entry pays direct homage to GTA 2. The main character of the series that first stepped into the third dimension is referred to as Claude. However, it's been made clear that this character and Claude Speed from GTA 2 aren't intended to be the same person. That being said, the vast majority of the community seem to consider these 2 silent protagonists one and the same. Whether or not GTA 3 Claude is the same character we see in its predecessor, he's definitely the first real protagonist that we could connect to in the series, as we see him betrayed by his girlfriend Catalina during a bank heist in Liberty City, where the couple moved to from the Midwest. This game's plot is set in 2001, the same year the game released, and it sees Claude go on to escape what would have been 10 years in prison, after the Colombian mafia attack his prison transfer and kidnap an old man. Claude would immediately seek revenge on Catalina, but first he'd need to get back on his feet, with the help of his fellow former prison inmate 8-Ball, who would introduce him to the Leone Mafia in and around the city. Claude would build a repertoire with the Mafia, and more especially with Don Salvatore's wife Maria. As it turns out, Maria told her husband, the head of the Mafia, that she had an affair with Claude to make Salvatore jealous.
I told him we were an item. Don't ask me why, I don't know.
Leading to Claude needing to escape the vengeful scope of the Mafia, which he would do by assassinating Salvatore at the request of the Yakuza. Claude would ally himself with the Yakuza leaders Asuka and Kenji permanently, moving himself and Maria to Staunton Island, the recreation of Manhattan, where he would also come across the media mogul Donald Love. However, as Claude would continue his work for the Yakuza, their efforts would be continually disrupted by the Colombian cartel, now led by Catalina and the man she betrayed Claude for, Miguel. Miguel? It's not Miguel, it's Miguel. My Scottish accent gets in the way sometimes, and yes, it's Scottish for everyone asking in the comments. However, Asuka had her ways to minimize these issues, including a dirty cop by the name of Ray Machowski, whose dirty dealings come at a price. However, one man has the funds, the media mogul Donald Love, who as it turns out, is a fucking cannibal. Love would hire Machowski to destroy evidence of his cannibalistic ways, and Machowski would arrange Claude to take care of it. Following this, Claude would be invited to meet Love, who he would find out is connected to the old man who was kidnapped at the beginning of the game. Donald would instruct Claude to rescue the old man, and would establish a strong connection between the two men. Now allies, Donald would look to use Claude's particular set of skills to drive the property prices in the city down by escalating the gang war, which can be done by Claude killing Kenji and trying to convince the Yakuza that it was the Colombians. Claude, looking to draw out Catalina, agrees to the assassination, and it eventually leads him to a confrontation with Miguel and his ex-girlfriend. Catalina immediately shows her true colours however, abandoning Miguel to escape, and the gang war looks to come to a head. Asuka takes Miguel as prisoner, and he allows for the Yakuza to make progress. That is, until Catalina gets involved, killing Asuka and Miguel and kidnapping Maria, instructing Claude to bring her a ransom for his mistress's life. He travels to the third borough of Liberty City, where he attempts to make the transfer from Maria's life, but Catalina betrays once again, flying Maria to the Cochrane Dam as Claude chases her down and destroys Catalina's helicopter before rescuing Maria. With his journey of revenge complete, he walks off into the sunset with his trophy wife at his side. As we all know, Grand Theft Auto isn't a linear story, but it's an anthology. And so with the release of Grand Theft Auto Vice City in 2002, we were presented with a whole new world, a whole new cast of characters, and a brand new story, inspired by the gangster tales of the likes of Scarface. Set in 1986, we take the shoes of Tommy Vercetti, sent south from Liberty City by his boss Sonny Forelli to make a coke deal with the Vance brothers, a deal that goes wrong and ends up with Tommy's allies and one of the brothers dead. Understandably upset, Forelli instructs Tommy to take care of the situation, and he does just that by making connections with Juan Cortez, his daughter Mercedes, and by extension, the drug lord Ricardo Diaz. Meanwhile, Tommy's contact Ken Rosenberg leads our protagonist to one Leo Teal, who supposedly was involved in the setup. After beating Teal to death, Tommy reunites with Lance, the surviving Vance brother, who agrees to form an alliance with Tommy to recover the lost money and cocaine from the deal. However, as the two work with Ricardo, they discover that it was the Diaz family that ambushed them in the first place, and Lance snaps, attempting to murder the Kingpin and forcing Tommy to aid in an assassination at Diaz's mansion. This leaves a power vacuum in the city, and Tommy begins to build his own criminal empire, inheriting various rackets and businesses from Diaz and ignoring his debts to his old boss Forelli. Tommy hatches a plan to pay Forelli off with counterfeit cash. However, Tommy's growing success leads to Lance beginning to get jealous, and after Forelli travels down to Vice City to claim his prize, Lance betrays Tommy, forcing our protagonist to kill his ally and avoid the vengeance of the Forellis, as he permanently wounds Sonny and claims a place atop the criminal underworld of Vice City. Vice City is an absolute landmark of this franchise, as it provided the first playable protagonist that actually spoke dialogue.
It is my favorite El Burro movie. It's that. What else can I do?
It's probably not plugged in.
What? Damn. No matter. I can buy 100 more.
And because the series is so focused on character, that protagonist focus would become intrinsic to the next set of games. GTA San Andreas was the biggest jump the franchise had seen since its leap to 3D, and with it came an incredibly expanded world. Set in San Andreas and Los Santos, it would explore the infamous LA gang wars that dominated pop culture and news feeds throughout the late 80s and early 90s, and it did it through the eyes of Carl Johnson, aka CJ, alongside his iconic group of Sweet, Big Smoke and Ryder, all members of the Grove Street families. The gang led by Sweet gained power in Los Santos amidst the war between the Vagos and the Ballas. Vagos? 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 Vagos. How am I forgetting this?
Vago.
Vago. I'm going with Vago, because that's what YouTube says. CJ would take a hiatus from the gang after the death of his brother Brian, until 1992 when he would return to the city after the murder of his mother. The moment he touched down though, he would be arrested by a corrupt sect of the LSPD called Crash, who threatened to frame him for the murder of an officer unless he agreed to work as an insider for them. Reuniting with the gang, the Ballas would drive by the funeral, and seeing the cracks in the family structure, CJ would agree to stay and help them get back on their feet. He would aid in numerous jobs for the gang and would reunite with OG Loke, who he would help in his rap career.
Was you lonely, Loke?
CJ would also help Sweet spy on their younger sister, who was dating the leader of the Aztecas, Caesar, a local Hispanic gang, who Sweet would eventually ally with. In the meantime, he'd work with Crash to disrupt the activities of the Vagos and the Ballas, which would allow the family to take over Glen Park, and subsequently a number of other territories in the city.
Man, let me get to hear on this, man. Fuck this.
A meeting with Caesar would lead CJ to find out that the drive-by at the funeral was intended to take out Sweet, and after some investigation, the two would witness Ryder and Big Smoke working alongside the Ballas in order to undermine Sweet's control of the gang. CJ would be able to prevent the traitors from ambushing and killing Sweet, but that would lead both of the brothers to arrest, with Sweet being incarcerated and Crash extraditing CJ, warning him not to return to Los Santos. However, CJ was set on vengeance and returned to the city to build a resistance with Caesar. He would tear down various Ballas rackets and build his own businesses, but before he could take down the gang entirely, he would first get involved in the casino businesses in Las Venturas, eventually leading him to get involved with the Forelli Mafia. Yes, the same Forellis that appear in Vice City. CJ would assassinate the new leader of the Mafia, Marco Forelli, and align himself with Salvatore Leone. Eventually though, CJ would cut ties with the mob and leave Las Venturas, returning to Los Santos where he would be able to secure Sweet's release from prison by stealing a military jet from Mike Terreno, an undercover government agent. Picking up his brother, he would find Sweet disgruntled with his neglect of the gang, and so the two would work together to reclaim Grove Street and re-establish the family's presence. Eventually, this would lead them to track down Big Smoke, who would be fatally shot by CJ. However, before they could walk out into the sunset, Frank Twopenny, the leader of Crash, would interfere, claiming the money from Big Smoke's drug trade. However, CJ and Sweet would take down Twopenny, and finally be able to move on from this chaotic tale of corruption, betrayal, and family ties. San Andreas is perhaps the most satirical of all the GTA games, leaning heavily on the excess of the lives of these eccentric characters, and although the satire wouldn't disappear entirely, the next game in the series would take a more serious approach to its story. 4 years after San Andreas, Rockstar would finally release GTA 4, the franchise's grand return to an even more expansive Liberty City, and with the game's jump to Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3, its gameplay and its narrative would take a big step up. GTA 4 tells the story of Niko Bellic, an Eastern European war veteran who migrates to Liberty City to reunite with his iconic cousin who told him all about the wonders of the American dream. As it turns out though, Roman is a taxi driver who's in a deep pit of debt with the Albanian mob, and with a Russian loan shark called Vladimir, who Niko does several jobs for to alleviate Roman's debt. Interestingly here though, for the first time in the series, you're given a choice as to whether you kill Vlad's associates, playing into the idea that Niko traveled to America to escape a life of brutal violence. However, it's then revealed that Vlad had an affair with Roman's girlfriend, and so that violent side appears, and he murders the loan shark, leading to the Russian mafia kidnapping the two cousins and forcing Niko to work for them, as he actually ends up beginning to ally with the mob, until one of the members of the mafia, Dmitri, hires him to assassinate the mob's leader. As it turned out, Dmitri set Niko up and sells him out to the Russian crime lord Ray Bulgarin, who ambushes Niko and burns down Roman's taxi company. Niko also meets Roman's girlfriend at this point and her friend Michelle, who goes on to get in a relationship with Niko. Trying to escape the Russians, Niko flees to another borough of the city, where he begins working with Manny Escuela, a local vigilante, and the Puerto Rican drug lord Elizabeta Torres. In his new work, he makes allies with Patrick McCreary, Playboy X, and Johnny Klebitz, each notorious gangsters in their own right. Playboy, a drug dealer, introduces Niko to a fellow dealer called Dwayne Forge, but it's quickly revealed that the two have a death wish against each other, and again, Niko gets a choice as to who he kills. In the meantime, Elizabeta reveals that she's under a police investigation, and the bloody murder of Manny doesn't help her cause, leading to Niko cutting ties with her again, and continuing his escape from the criminal underworld. However, this doesn't happen immediately, as Niko begins to work alongside the McCreary family, who themselves work with a crooked cop called Francis, who helps the Irish gang rob the bank of Liberty City. Following this, Derek McCreary, recently returned from Ireland, hired Niko to fight back against the Albanian mob, but Niko gets a request from Francis to assassinate the Irish kingpin. However, Derek preemptively asks Niko to protect him from exactly that assassination, leading to another difficult decision: kill Francis or kill Derek. Regardless of what the player chooses, they attend the funeral, which is attacked by the Albanians after all the action Niko took against them. This leads Niko to distance himself from the Irish and begin allying himself with the Italians, who he aids in a jewel heist.
Go on, get out of here. Don't come back till you get a brain implant or something.
Eventually, he tries to sell the jewels with Johnny to the Jewish mafia, but they're ambushed by Louis Lopez, who takes the jewels as Johnny escapes with the cash. Regardless, the Italians agree to aid Niko in tracking down the members of his old military squad, Florian Kravich and Darko Brevic. Darko is one of the 3 survivors of a horrendous ambush on the squad, and he betrayed his military brethren, leading Niko to break his vow to relinquish violence to seek revenge. But he's only able to find Florian, who he helps kill a group of men trying to blackmail him for his relationship with the vice mayor of Liberty City, Bryce Dawkins. Later, Nico takes revenge on Johnny by killing high-ranking members of the Lost MC, before his Italian and Irish ties clash. Patrick and Nico are tasked with kidnapping the daughter of the head of the Ancelotti family, who were able to recover the diamonds from the heist. Using her as ransom, Nico organizes an exchange for the diamonds, which is interrupted again by Ray Bulgarin, the Russian crime lord that burned down Roman's taxi company at the start of the game. A shootout ensues, but the diamonds are lost, and the gang war in Liberty City begins to quiet down. And finally, Nico is able to track down the other member of his squadron, Darko Brevic, and he comes face to face with this traitor, this coward. He is given one final choice: succumb to his vengeful soul, or truly give up his violent nature and move on from his life of crime. GTA 4 was kind of a step away from what Grand Theft Auto was known for, presenting a far more nuanced and morally three-dimensional story of an intrinsically violent man trying to lead a better life. And although its successor would return to the more heightened world of the series, that character concept was the basis of GTA 5. The seventh main entry into the series, Grand Theft Auto 5 opens with the image of Michael DeSanta, an ex-criminal and FIB-affiliated witness that sought out a world of glitz and glamour in Los Santos. Meeting Franklin Clinton, a legally ambiguous car repossessor, he takes the young man under his wing after destroying the dealership of Simeon. Franklin gets a look into the chaotic family life of the DeSantas, which leads to Michael tearing down the mansion of Martin Madrazo, putting him in millions of dollars of debt to the Latino mob boss. So, the two return to Michael's old way of life as a thief, connecting with Lester Crest to steal the wares of a jewelry store in Vinewood. However, this heist is seen on the news by Michael's estranged old partner, the psychotic and iconic Trevor Phillips, who's inspired by the sight of his own friend to expand his meth and run-gunning endeavours in Sandy Shores. Trevor tears down the power base of local gangs, gets in a conflict with the Chinese, and murders Johnny Klevitz, the leader of the Lost MC, before travelling to Los Santos to reacquaint with his former brother. Meanwhile, the FIB also notice Michael's criminal activity, and his handler Dave Norton uses it as an opportunity to force Michael into a number of under-the-table jobs, including the kidnap and torture of a suspected terrorist at the order of Steve Haynes. In the meantime, Trevor attempts to set out his own heist, organising a robbery of a government freighter that holds a nuclear superweapon. But after the successful theft, Lester forces Trevor to return his gains, or else risk the entire group being put on a government hit list. At this point, the FIB put Michael in touch with the eccentric billionaire Devin Weston, who offers Michael the opportunity of a job with the Vinewood producer Solomon Richards, in return for a few favours. Michael encourages Franklin to help him take care of it, but before they can complete it, Michael's called back by Martin Madrazo to aid him in destroying the evidence of his criminal activity. Michael brings Trevor to help him take care of his wife, but in true Trevor fashion, the madman kidnaps and eventually falls in love with her. So, both Michael and Trevor go back into hiding in Sandy Shores, where they rob a Merryweather train, and Michael uses this as an opportunity to make a peace offering to Madrazo. Trevor refuses, but is swayed after Michael offers him a better shot. The Union Depository, the largest bank in the country, the supposedly impossible heist that they'd spoken about for 2 decades. Reluctantly, Trevor returns Madrazo's wife and the two go back to Los Santos, but it's not long until their truce breaks down again. As it turns out, Michael and Trevor's old running buddy Brad was shot in the heist that Michael used to escape his life of crime, and buried in his place up in North Yankton. Trevor goes up to see for himself, and Michael follows, but before the two can fight, they're interrupted by the men of Wei Sheng, a wealthy businessman that Trevor screwed over at the beginning of the game. The Chinese kidnap Michael, forcing Franklin to rescue him, and it seems as if Trevor and Michael's partnership is over. That is, until Michael's summoned to meet Dave and Steve, all of whom are ambushed by the IAA and the private army Merryweather, and in the midst of the shootout, Trevor makes his grand return, helping Michael escape apparently so that the two can pursue the Union Depository. But the heist has to wait, as first the movie Michael helps Solomon Richards get running is completed. Before it can premiere, Devin Weston's assistant Molly steals the film reel, and after an intense chase, she's killed after flying into the propeller of a jet. So although the film premiere is greenlit, Devin instigates a vendetta against Michael, sending Merryweather to his house to attack his family. Oh, and yeah, Michael's family leave and then come back. It's a long story. Michael fights off Merryweather, but it's clear that there's too many forces acting against the trio, especially after Franklin is threatened by the FIB to kill Trevor. Speaking of Trevor, at this point he brings the other two along with Lester to plan and execute the heist of the UD, which the gang pulls off successfully, leaving them the wealth to live a truly free life, apart from the small issue of everyone that knows them wanting them dead. Franklin is visited by Devin Weston and told to kill his surrogate father, leaving Franklin with a similar choice to Nico's in GTA 4. Kill Michael, kill Trevor, or die himself.
Man, I'm fucked, man. I don't know what the fuck to do right now.
And given you take the third choice, aka the correct choice, you see Franklin go to Lester for help, regrouping the trio for one final standoff. Piece by piece, they eliminate their respective enemies before finally kidnapping Devin Weston, taking him to a cliffside in the north of the state, and as the sun goes down on this story and on this series so far, they go their separate ways. Grand Theft Auto is a series influenced more by its worlds and its set pieces than by its stories, but that's not to say those stories aren't incredibly memorable. Each of the games set out great plots with unforgettable casts of characters, and I have no doubt that as we go into the next era of this series, we will see the same when it comes to GTA 6. Thank you so much for watching. If you did enjoy the video, please do hit like. If you're new here, make sure to subscribe with post notifications turned on. Also, like I said, these videos can't keep getting made without the help of my Patreon supporters. Thank you so much to all of them. And with all that being said, I've been Joe, aka Found a Scarab, and I will see you in the next one.